to compel them to set up this ecclesiastical court.
Yes.
Interesting.
Because it is a violation of Section 42. It discriminates.
So how this will be constituted will eventually be determined, or...
Oh, we already have a bill that we attached the letter.
You know, when we talk about discrimination, let's go back to discrimination before we come back to this theocracy issue now. For some, they also argue that for the male gender, they also see that particular section of the Constitution as discriminatory because they're not, explicitly mentioned as to when they too can actually renounce their citizenship if they are married or not. So when they say, well, a woman or someone is deemed fit to have been maybe a mature person when you're married, they were actually referring to the female gender, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's another discrimination against the male gender.
Yes.
But these issues, well, when we have a whole lot of people, a whole lot of minds in the assembly, in the Senate, one would have thought that one of these should have been brought to them. And if you look at the letter written by Olisa Agbakoba, it doesn't seem as if it's getting any attention, at least before the public.
Yes. But I think some people within or a lot of people within the Christian community have started taking up this issue. Because for me, it's actually something we should take very seriously. You know, because if we've provided for people of a particular faith, I think other faiths should also be there should be provision for them.
Do they also have it in their religion? If we speak,
yes. In fact, I was even shocked myself when I
you talked about the Buddhists, for instance. Do they also have their own legal system?
I think so. At least for the ecclesiastical and Christian courts, I was amazed at the quality of their jurisprudence. So their jurisprudence is as good as any other jurisprudence. So why should the system not take care of them?
So are we eventually going to have what, Christian banks as well, or what?
If we have Sharia banks or Muslim banks or customary kinds of banks, why shouldn't we have Christian banks?
Wow.
So that's the point I'm making. We have to make up our minds as to the nature of constitution we want. Do we want a secular one, in which case all matters of faith will be removed completely from the constitution? Or do we want one that is theocratic, in which case we will carry everybody along? Christians, Muslims, and those who practice customary law.
What does it say as it is now, the Constitution?
No, that's why I said as it stands now, the Constitution itself, the Constitution contradicts itself, because in Section 10 it says it prohibits any form of state religion, and then when you read further you begin to see Sharia courts of appeal, customary courts of appeal, and all. So for me, I find it a bit contradictory. That's why I said we are trying to have it both ways, which is not possible.
Yeah, but I mean, how come lawyers haven't pointed this out years ago? Because I mean, this is part of what you all thought in jurisprudence and all of those. They list all of those, how the courts are
But you also have to understand that we are evolving as a country, and our constitutional evolution is also taking place. So it's as we practice these things that some of these things come up. So if the Senate did not bring up Section 29(4)(b), a lot of people will probably not have even thought about it. So, but now that is an issue,
was an aside. The Senate, yeah, it grabbed a lot of attention.
So we're evolving constitutionally.
Well, in all of that argument or in all of that brouhaha, did you understand what the Senate were actually trying to do? Or were you also caught in the mix of, they were trying to legalize early marriage?
No. Even when you read the entire section, from the beginning to the end on citizenship, you realize that it has nothing to do with legalizing child marriage. No, it's about renunciation of citizenship.
But again, I wonder why, as a country, we're still somehow, what is not seem to be catching the attention of what exactly it is.
I didn't get the question.
For instance, what exactly is not the news seem to be what gets the attention the most.
And that's why I pointed out when we started that the problem is the nature of constitution we want. That's where the problem is. What kind of constitution do we want? And I think that's where what our policymakers should be paying attention to. What kind of constitution do we want? They should answer these fundamental questions before even deciding to start altering and deleting and adding.
But they say they're doing all those alterations or review based on what the people say they want.
No. You have to have an idea of what you intend to achieve first before you even put the question to the people. You don't just put the question to the people. People, of course, have different needs and demands.
Yeah, but I thought they listed the areas that they thought people should vote that they wanted to amend.
Yes, but the fundamental issues they've really not addressed it. Issues, for example, of devolution of powers, which is very, very important. Should we have state police?
It was all part of.
But are they? How do I put it now? Are they doing it in a way that would, carry everybody along or reflect the realities of?
I think that's the argument now. Does it really carry everyone along? Because remember, it was the Lagos State governor who actually asked a whole section of Lagosians about if they actually voted for this and that, because at the end of it all, what they finally saw in that big book was that, well, maybe perhaps, it was as if people manufactured some of those votes, if we were to go by that particular result. So is it that when the people speak, I don't know if you've, were you in any of those fora?
Yes, I attended the Senate public hearing, somewhere in Okeke.
In Okeke.
Yeah.
Well, the outcome, are you privy to any of the outcome concerning some of those votes?
No, not really, no.
Because that is where the problem will definitely come up from. Because if you were a member of such and finally you don't get access to know the outcome, for instance, if you had a resounding yes to a particular move concerning the review of that particular constitution, and you get to hear the result at the end of the day that it was a resounding no, then you can actually query that. But now nobody gets access to any of that.
Yeah, but you see, the challenge with that is that we had public sessions in like almost all the is it 300 and something federal constituencies, that's in the House of Reps, and we also had about 6 in the different geopolitical zones. So when you harmonize all those views, it may be difficult to actually say who won on this or which section of the country had their way on.
But if it's made public, for instance, you say, constituent or constituency 1 actually had this on this particular matter, and you say constituency 2 had this on this particular matter. By the time we do a collation of everything, we should be able to know the true mind of the people.
Yes,
but we haven't actually pursued that, because it is. Otherwise, we just might be going back to where we're coming from.
Yes, because I know there was this. I know at the House of Reps there was this controversy as to what transpired, the votings and all that, and some of the issues. I don't know how that was eventually resolved, but I think, like you said, I think it would have been nice if the National Assembly had
because the governor of Lagos State is also a senior colleague, and he says, well, they should ask to see their question papers or their results. And it sounds funny, but that's how it should have been, isn't it?
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think the National Assembly would have done the country a lot of good if they had actually published, the voting pattern and what each constituency voted for, and then allowed Nigerians to be able to harmonize all the positions and then know which ones sailed through at the public sessions and which ones didn't sail through at the public sessions.
So that suggests that at the end of the day, even if the National Assembly concludes with the review or amendment, as they call it, you will still have dissenting voices.
Yes. The Nigerian Labour Congress, for example, is threatening to go on strike over the issue of minimum wage.
They're trying to move it from the
exclusive to concurrent. Yeah.
Oh dear. What do you think about that particular one? Where do you think that if that happens, states
personally, I think it doesn't make sense to me. For the federal government. Personally, I think that it really doesn't make sense for the National Assembly to be fixing minimum wage for states. It doesn't make sense.
They're not fixing it. They're moving that function.
What they are doing, what the National Assembly is trying to do, is to move minimum wage, issue of minimum wage to the concurrent list. And when that happens, it means that individual states can now have their own minimum wage. So you can have, say, Anambra may have, say, XYZ as their own minimum wage, and Kanu will have their own minimum wage, and Lagos will have their own minimum wage. But the Nigerian Labour Congress is seeing it as an attempt to probably dismember them or whittle down their influence at the national level.
You think it's justified? Because, I mean, way before now, it wasn't centralized. It was former President Obasanjo's time that he came in, and all of those were centralized. Then he came back and said, look, I'm the one who brought it all under the exclusive list in the first place. Now I want to take it back to how I met it. And you all are complaining. So,
but you see, if you look at it realistically, I think it is better for states to determine their own, because the economies are different. If you pay me, if what you pay somebody in, if you pay somebody a particular amount of money in Lagos, and then you want to pay the same amount of money to somebody in Enugu, the economies are different. The standard of living there, they are not the same.
But they don't seem to raise these points when they get to the Council of State meeting, where they all agree, or is it NEC meeting, where they all agree on those recommendations, but only they go back to the states and say, sorry, I can't pay. So that's some sort of inconsistency on their part, for those who do that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, yeah.
Well, who knows? How do you see this ending, this amendment of the Constitution?
Well, I think, for me, I think that the National Assembly should take very seriously this question I continue to ask as to the nature of Constitution we want. Do we really want this centralized arrangement where everything comes from the national down? Because I think that's actually why there is this amount of tension. Because if every faith or every group or every ethnic enclave appears to be very, very concerned about somebody taking their rights or putting them at some kind of disadvantage.
But aren't we glossing over one part? Don't forget, this is politics, because it's political. They will always amend it politically. Given those political institutions. Now, you remember regions. Some regions have 7 states, some have 6, some have 5. How do you think there will ever be a balance at the end of the day when they come to vote? So it appears as though it will always be lopsided based on that arrangement.
Well, it still goes back to the point I've been making. What kind of constitution do we want? I remember, I think it was Alex Ekweme that recommended having a 6 geopolitical zone. Maybe that would solve the problem. So it's about what we want, as what kind of arrangement we want. Do we like this overbearing centralized arrangement, or is it or should we devolve power?
Even though we are a federal system.
Yes, in fact, this is even tied to the issue of, because we say we're a federal system, but we operate a unitary arrangement. So it just doesn't make sense. We take one position, in theory, but in practice, we take another position. It doesn't make sense. We have a centralized police, we have a centralized court system, where everything is centralized, and yet we're a federation.
Is it possible to get lawyers, maybe the body of lawyers, not benchers, maybe MBA, to come up and say, well, these are the recommendations that we think should happen, and we'd like to stick to our guns?
Well,
when these are done?
I don't know if... This is a personal opinion. I don't know if the NBA will be in a position to do that, because the NBA too has the same problem, because the NBA is centralized.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So where do we turn to? Where do we start?
Because we have a national NBA, and they
have chapters, though.
Yes, they have chapters, but you'll notice that the center is actually stronger than the units. So even though the units, they do a few things, but the center is still very, very strong.
So, they are putting forth from the tree.
So it's about deciding, what would work best for the country. What's the nature of a constitution we want?
Well, I think looking at the time now, what will work best is just the 8 o'clock headline news. But we have to thank you for coming on this morning.
Yeah, it's a pleasure,
Okeke, a legal practitioner.